Hello. Hello. Hey. Good morning. I've been up since 4:30, as you do when you arrive. So exciting things. Originally, when we thought about the session, of course, you have to submit a session proposal December. And things change a lot in between. And I was really wanting to have a very exciting, very intensive, how to write a framework in Swift session. But that probably would only appeal to a very small part of the audience. So we've tried to make this a little more exciting, jazzed it up a little bit, and so some cool things. So I'm Joel. Hello, everyone. Hello. Good morning. Orchard and Grove, that's our company. It's the closest Apple reminiscent name we could get that was not trademark infringing. If you've listened to Mr. Ackland talk about the creation of his company name that was recently just formed, we have similar stories. So this is owning AD through the NoMAD AD Auth framework. In hindsight, maybe not the most elegant session title. I was expecting it maybe to be reworked before it got put in the guide, but here we are. So we're going to have a lot of fun with this. You can also call this how to add AD Auth to any application. I'm going to show you through that. We've got some code, all open source, and it's out there, so you'll be able to actually do this and put Active Directory into any environment that you want. And we have a challenge that I hopefully will meet. It will be fun, because the other title of this is Watch Joel Write an Application Right Before Your Eyes. All right. And if it does not work, I'll be horribly ashamed and blame the internet on this, as you do. So, a couple of things. We're Orchard and Grove. We're now more than just me, which is exciting. I don't have to do everything anymore. We kind of have a couple of very basic precepts that we use whenever we do any software. We have a lot of open source software out there. We'll talk about that a little bit. In any of the projects that we work on. And kind of the first and foremost of it is life is better when you don't have to bind. People think we don't like AD. That's nothing to do with it. We're very excited about AD, but we just don't think you should have to bind your Macs. Having said that, there may be some reasons why you do, and we agree that that's legitimate. If I can waffle anymore, I will. But in general, we think that not binding is the right answer to have. We also think that directory services get a lot more exciting when you're not just doing LDAP and Kerberos. So we spent a lot of time recently working on Okta, for example. We have some products now around Okta, smart cards and other things that you can do that bring a lot more to directory services than just kind of the traditional LDAP, Kerberos, Active Directory engagement that you might have had before. And then our overarching goal is to make admins' lives easier in some point or fashion. Just giving something for the users to do is great, but we're really interested in making your lives, those of us in this room, a lot more simpler and easier when managing all these machines and doing things at scale. Who's heard of NoMAD? Yay! For the video, all hands in the room. Who's using it? Good. That means we've still got some market share to take over. So I'm excited about that. So NoMads are kind of our first product, been out for over a year. Name comes from No More AD, NoMAD, and you should get less mad when you use it. The jokes don't get any better. We're there. So it's everything you like about AD. Does a couple of cool things. If you haven't used it, download it. It's open source. Have some fun with it. If you're familiar with AD, though, there's quite a process that you have to go through in order to use Active Directory and to get everything that you need out of it. And some of this is really not fun, especially from a code perspective, right? Because to do it right, you've got to use SRV records and DNS. You've got to look up the SRV records for the global catalogs. You then have to use one of those to actually find the site that you're a member of. There's this funky thing called an LDAP ping that you have to do. Or you've got to shout out every IP address you may have ever had and try to find out the site that matches. So once you've found the site, then you got to go back. You got to talk directly to that site, find a domain controller in that site, and then you actually get to ask for the user record. So there's a whole lot of work that has to be done if you really want to use Active Directory correctly. There's a lot of things that happen in all of this that you don't have to do, but we wanted to do it the right way, so we put a lot of work in the last year and a half or so, making sure that NOMAD can work in just about any Active Directory environment that's out there. Really cool stuff. However, you end up, like I said, with a lot of complexity. There's a lot of different components in here, and this is just kind of a simplification. We're not even really doing the site lookup. And we found that as we were making other products in our environment, we ended up rewriting this code an awful lot. And anytime you have to reuse or rewrite or repurpose the same code a number of times, that's when you start to think, well, maybe we should do this the right way, turn it into a framework, turn it into a library, something that we can use on a regular basis just by dropping into an application and not having to reinvent the wheel every time. Plus, that way we only have to make updates to one place, update that framework, and then we can just update all the rest of our apps with it. So we started thinking about how could we do this, because we now have a family of products that all revolve around the caribou and various colors. So that's NOMAD in the middle, NOMAD, I don't even know all the names well. The marketing people are going to kill me. NOMAD Pro is on the left. That goes to Okta. NOMAD Login is this thing on the right. Looks like a lock, right? Right? A little thing. Yeah. Subtle. All right, so that's NOMAD Login. We'll show you that at the end. That's our Loginwindow plugin. Some very, very cool stuff there. And then we also have pieces that work with smart cards. That's a very well-designed smart card down there. And I wish smart cards actually looked that way. But that's NOMAD PK Init. So some very cool stuff. And this is just what we have now. A lot more ideas coming forward, but all of these use Active Directory in some way. So now that we have 4 or 5 products all using AD, this is when it made sense to kind of take everything that was in NOMAD, take that whole Active Directory integration, put it into a framework so anybody can add it into any application that they have. Code reuse. Again, anytime that you find yourself doing something on a regular basis, you should probably find a good way to encapsulate that so that you don't have to keep redoing it. I'm going to take a guess, but I'll ask for a show of hands. Who's written a framework in Swift? For the video, no hands went up. And there's kind of a reason for that. Once we thought it was pretty exciting, everything we do is in Swift. We find it makes us very effective and very productive, but it also has you on the bleeding edge. And so as we've gone forward, this is the logo now for our AD framework. And I have some fantastic keynote skills here that you will see. So this is Steampunk Carry the Caribou. And this denotes our framework. That's what we're going to talk about here a little bit, show you how anyone in this room can become programmers in a matter of minutes. But if you want some of the nitty-gritty on the frameworks in Swift, it's still very early. Swift is Swift 4 right now. Swift 5 is coming. It's been out, I don't know, not that many years. But every year there's a new version. There's some goods and bads to that. The bads is that you have to recompile everything, tweak everything. But we've managed to make that all very simple for you. The framework is open source. All you have to do is download it, put it into Xcode, and go. The trick is the framework needs to be built in the exact same version of Xcode as you build your app. All right? That means that if Xcode comes up with a beta and you move your app to the beta, you have to rebuild the framework in that beta. Just a little handy thing to keep in mind. All right, so what does the framework do? Framework's a nice piece of code that you can drop it into an app, and I'll have you writing AD applications in Xcode in 10 minutes or less. That's my challenge, and to make this interesting, we're going to put a little wager on that here in a few moments. But just to give you an idea of what the framework does, we have a session. The session talks to your application, so your application doesn't have to know anything about what AD is. It's got a site manager that goes out, finds out what your actual AD site that you should be in is. It detects network changes, of course, and then re-looks up your site. Also, we'll then talk to Windows. That's our non-copyright infringing Windows logo. No colors in it. Kerberos, and then that is the open LDAP icon that you've never seen before. But I swear, if you go to the open LDAP website, that icon is there. And so our framework uses the Kerberos libraries built into macOS, and then open LDAP, which is also on macOS, to do all the connectivity to AD. So very nice. And then since we needed to use this a lot, we actually have an expiration manager that will create a menu that can go right into your app and will show you all of your current users and when they expire. And this all put together, everything within that kind of green box, then becomes the NoMAD AD framework that you can then use in any app that you want. All right. And again, the whole framework is open source. A lot of that was because everything that we had in the framework came from NoMAD. So it's been battle tested on some of the funkiest AD domains that we've seen ever. Definitely. So it manages all your AD interactions. Like I said, site aware, look at that, even the glowing eyes again. It uses callbacks, which are a cool way of not having to show beach balls to your users. And then there's that menu item that I mentioned before. So somewhat interesting. Maybe not yet. I have to excite you more. All right, so what we're going to do, entirely open source, battle tested as I mentioned, and then uses a lot of the built-in APIs. Get that great animation on the eyes again. Look at that. Here's the page that you can get it at, gitlab.com, because we do everything in GitLab. You can see, Josh, this was a screenshot from last night. He's been doing some updates to it. It's very actively in use by us, so we're going to keep it maintained and do everything with it. So let's use it. This is where David gets a little concerned. So we're going to go into Xcode here. And I've got, to make this more interesting, I have a timer that we're going to run. Let me hide a bunch of stuff so you can see this. So this is Xcode. This is the Xcode framework that's in here. We'll make the text a little bit bigger so you can see it. A couple of different pieces to it. We've got some documentation in here. We've got all the managers. It's more than a few thousand lines of code that's in here. We've started putting in the ability to do certificate in here as well, so you don't even have to think about that. There's some Objective-C, but it's almost entirely Swift, and the Objective-C that's left we're going to get rid of as soon as possible. Here's what a user record in AD looks like. We package that all up for you. Here's logging, some Unix utilities that we've got in here that we've done. So all of this is really nice. You can download this all, and you would just hit this play button, and it will build a copy of the NoMAD AD Auth framework. All right. So once you have that, you can go into Xcode, and you can do File, New, Project. We're going to put this a Cocoa app, and we'll call this Mac a Duck. What's a good name? Challenge. There we go, if I spell it correctly. That's going to be the biggest part of this. I'm going to spell a lot of things wrong. We won't put this in temp. We'll throw this, let's put it in source. That's a nice place. All right, so now we've got kind of our project started in Xcode. I have a little timer here. I actually spent more time on this timer than I did on this. So this is going to do a countdown. At 15 minutes, if I don't have a working app, it's going to say something very nice about Python, which I don't want to happen. And at 20 minutes, if I don't have a working app, you'll all have left and gone to the next session. But then it'll format my hard drive, right? So a little manufactured drama. There you go. That's the word that I was looking for. All right. So with this, I believe I can get this all done. And we're going to take this app, and now that we've got the framework, so clock's running great. I've already killed 30 seconds. That's insane. So what we're going to do, we've got a brand new app here in Xcode. I'll make this bigger so that you can see it once we get into the text. And the first thing you're going to do, here is the framework when it gets built out of your original Xcode app. So all we're going to do here is drag this over into embedded binaries. We're going to copy some items in. And now we've got the framework that's added. So right now, our new project actually has everything it needs to know about Active Directory. And we're done. Hey, thank you. We're done in a minute. So we're actually going to do some fun stuff here. So you go to your view controller. We're going to hide some of this stuff. I don't need the help. We can do this. And really quickly, we're just going to import the framework. NoMAD AD Auth. Now we have access to everything, and we're going to make a NoMAD user session delegate. Grab that. We're going to do a quick compile. It's going to yell at me, and it's going to say I need some stubs here. So it's going to put these stubs in. And this is all the code we're going to write. We're just going to get rid of these so it doesn't yell at me. And now we're going to spend time where things really matter, which is actually in the UI itself. So what do you need for a successful AD authentication? You need like a box, right, for people to type things in. So we'll get a text field, and we'll put that in there. You need a secure text field, so we'll put one of those, and that's where the password goes. And then we're going to have a label, because we want to have something so that people know what's going on. So we're going to put that in there. We're going to call this user, right? And then we'll cut and paste this, and we're going to call this one password. That's pass, that's easier. All right, we'll drag these out. This won't look very pretty, but you'll get the idea. And then we need a button to make things happen, right? Let's get that lined up. And then we drag it a little bit more to the right. And we go down here and we get a button. Did I spell that right? It's really small here. I need to look up on the big screen. Push button. So we'll grab this, not one. There you go. Now, put a button in there, and then we will make this a little bit smaller. 3 minutes. Is the tension building? Is anyone concerned that I won't write this? That was good. Thank you for the vote of confidence. All right, so now that we have our UI done, we're going to name this. This is going to be Authenticate. I spelled that wrong. AUTH, there we go. We're going to make the window have a title name so that it's not just a random window. So we're going to go into here. Whoops, where am I looking for? Go into window controller. There we go. And we'll say sign in. Boom. And now if I hit play, you're going to see a very small app come up that won't do anything right now, but we'll see that the UI is already built. Hey, we got a sign-in box. See, when I was at Apple, we always used to do these demos about showing people how to make a web browser in like no lines of code. But I have 8 web browsers already. I don't need another one. But I don't have a lot of AD authentication, so I thought this would be kind of interesting. All right, so now we're going to go up here, and we're going to glue the UI into the app. And that's doing this Unity view here. Manual. We'll go to our view controller. There it is. And this is the nicest thing, is that you can just do a bunch of drag and drop. We're going to put a mark in here, IB outlets. And then we'll drag in our username. We'll call that username. We're going to drag in our secure text field. We're going to call this password. We're then going to drag in our button. And we're going to call this button. And then we're going to make this button do something. So we're going to go down here, drag it in, and we'll call it an action and do eat. There we go. We've now wired up all of our UI pieces into here. I want to make sure that this is right, so we're going to go in and we're going to say key equivalent is return. Now that goes blue, so we're looking good. All right, so what we've done is we put little outlets so our code knows what each of these little pieces are. And in this button, something's going to happen. And that's this function down here. And what this happens when the button goes in, we're going to set up a global. And we're going to make a variable called session. And this is the wrong, there we go. NOMAD user session. Boom. So now we've got a thing up there that we can use. And when I go down here, I can say session equals NOMAD user session. And I can create this. And this is what I did wrong the last time I did it. It's always exciting when I get the wrong thing in here. And I think it's just user session. No. I've got this built. There it shows, NOMAD session. Now we do session equals NOMAD session. We should really fix that. And now I can actually create one. The domain, we're going to do nomad.test. That's my AD domain, and we're going to do the user is going to be username string value. So this is coming right out of our UI here. All right, and now we're almost done with AD authentication. We just got to do two things. We got to wire up a password. So we're going to do the session user pass is password string value. And then we're going to do session authenticate. So this is our code that does all the Active Directory interaction. A couple lines. You take a username and password, you take that out of the UI, and then you're going to do the authentication set. And once that happens, you'll get some of these callbacks over here. And these callbacks are actually going to want to authenticate the user. So very, very simple. And we can just put in a print auth succeeded. And then we'll put in a print no auth for you. And then another print. What we have here is we've got a third function that as soon as you get authentication and you have Kerberos tickets for the user, we'll then be able to actually go out and get that entire user record on your behalf. So all the groups that a user is a member of, all of those pieces fall into place here. And we got 8 minutes. Tension is mounting. Build failed. Oh, what am I doing wrong? View controller. Stored property session without initial value. That's right, because we got to set that with a question mark at the end. And then it'll yell at me twice down here to put in question marks. Luckily, Xcode fixes most stuff for you. All you do is just tell it to fix everything, and then it just works. And see, now we're done. So we've got this. We're going to do a build. 8 minutes, 56 seconds. All right, build succeeded. So now we can actually run this, and we'll set up the, we'll get out a Unity view so you don't see the same thing twice. All right, and view, debug area, activate console. Sounds very exciting. And I'm going to make sure my VPN is up and running. Uh-oh.
No network.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. David, my network went away. Let me try them. Is the McAduck network working now?
Yes.
All right. This is somebody's
Capital M.
sabotaging me. It's Mac AD.
UK. 2018 capital
Is it
M.
UK? No UK. 2018. This is where I take a quick break. There we go. We got network. All right. So if the VPN works, the app's going to work, and then we're going to be done. I'm excited. Everybody nervous? Uh-oh, it just went yellow. All right, so if we hit play, we're going to get an app up. And I can put in a username. There we go, and a password. And now we have a problem. The problem is everything in Xcode is now sandboxed. So we go up here, and we're actually, and sandboxing is normally a good thing. In this particular case, we need to make outgoing network connections. So we're going to enable that, and then it's going to give me a box to fix it. And then I'll hit play. See, I told you, it writes itself. And to really be clear here, I'm going to do a K-list. I do have a ticket, but it's for Joel at nomad.local. I'm just going to destroy all this. Do I have any more? I have a lot of tickets. There we go. Destroy that one. Good. All right, we're out of tickets. Clear that. I'm now going to run this app. Stop, run. And now it's going to work. Confidence is very high. Let me bring up the debugger so you can see what's going on. And then back up to here. All right, so that's where the app is working. I'm going to type in my username in AD. And I'm going to hit authenticate. And I'm going to hit authenticate. And let's see if we've got tickets. Hey! Kerberos tickets. So that's exciting, but it's not that exciting, right? So now we want to go through here. And once auth succeeds, we're going to add in another function. We're going to take the session, and the session's going to get user info. And then down here for the user information, we're going to print user groups. So whenever you use this framework, when you get done with the authentication succeeds, you can call the user info method. And the user info method will then go and get a large amount of stuff, anything that you would kind of want on that user. You can see everything. We pull the domain, the full name, the groups, the home directory. All of this we already grabbed from the Active Directory user record and we put into here. So you end up in a really nice environment where you can get all of these pieces without any effort. So I'm going to go in and we're going to print out the groups that you might be a member of. And then we're going to run this again. We're going to view the debugger again and then play. Compiling. We'd have to fix the first responder. We should put a spinner on here so it lets people know what's going on. So there's little niceties that you can do to this. But if we do this authentication here, well, we're not printing off into there. But anyway, we can figure that out. But let's actually do this for real. Let's do something much nicer. Let's do, and I got a minute and a half. Alert equals, if I can type correctly, otherwise, man, NS alert, we'll create one. Alert message text equals Swift rules and groups equals, and then we'll add in user groups. Come on. There we go. And debug description. It won't be super pretty, but it'll be okay. Alert run modal, and we'll have that in there. Probably yell that we're doing UI work from the background, but that's okay. I have a minute. Good. Compiling happened quickly. That's good. Ooh. I don't know what happened there.
Did your VPN drop?
Maybe. Oh, there it works. Can't find any KDC, so maybe we had a problem with the VPN. Well, but have I accomplished? Did we do something useful? 45 seconds to go. All right. I will hit pause on this clock. I don't want it to turn into red. I don't want to say anything nice about Python. So hopefully you have a pretty good way of getting into AD, being able to authenticate. For someone that wants to just do a function, if you're familiar, Swift has a thing called a process, which can just shell out to a command line executable. And what you could do is that once this authentication had succeeded, you'd be able to shell out to that process and then use that for whatever you needed as far as authentication would go. You could write a script that would act once you had Kerberos tickets. So ideally, this is a fairly easy way that you can get into a little bit of programming, a lot of Active Directory for a very minimal amount of effort on your behalf. And to make things even easier, we actually have a full app that's up there that shows you how to use the framework within your environment. So this is the NoMAD AD Auth sample. It's not the best of names, but it is a name. So you can find that also on our GitLab page, and that shows you exactly how to use the framework. You can download that, put that into Xcode, and that'll be a working version of what I just kind of wrote live. But even some fancier things, I think we put a spinner in there. We tell you how many days left you have on your password, some other cool stuff like that. Exciting? Woo! All right. But we wanted to kind of do something a lot more interesting with this. Who's heard of NOMAD Login? At the beginning of the session, yeah, well, fair enough. All right, so everyone should have heard of it, unless you were asleep at the beginning. Who's using it in production? All right, I thought we'd go on a limb there. It's not released yet, but we do have a few people using it in production. So that's curious. Who's messed around with the login window? Who's locked themselves out of their machine? All right, so just keep that in mind. So the login window is kind of cool in that it runs a bunch of mechanisms that it works as you go through the process of determining whether a user should be allowed into the machine or not. We have a plugin that puts into that process and allows you to authenticate to AD using this framework that I just showed you without actually being bound. And the functionality that we're looking for here is that you can have a machine in depth with this login window produced, pushed down, the machine will start up in depth. You can suppress the entire user creation. The user will then be at the login screen, but it'll be your login screen with your logo, your information, everything else. The user will then authenticate with Active Directory credentials. And if that authentication succeeds, we will do a just-in-time user creation. So we will create a user based upon those AD credentials. It'll be a local account, not a mobile account. That's no fun. That involves beach balls. We don't want that. So it'll be a local account with the username and password that is in AD, just never synchronized after that, unless you're using NoMAD or one or other products. So the cool thing about Loginwindow is there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for you to do things at the login process. Because you're simultaneously root, you're the security agent, which does all the UI for the login window, and you actually know the user's password. So we've been doing a lot of cool things here in this process. NOMAD Login is just kind of one of them. So like I said, allows for AD auth without being bound. It doesn't replace the login window, it just replaces the login window UI. It's still the system that's doing the actual authentication here. We're not validating the user being yes or no, we're just creating the user and then letting the system take over from there. NOMAD Login's entirely open source. We have the base mechanism with all the AD functions are a part of it. We're adding some multi-factor and some support for Okta and other things. Those will be part of some of the commercial products we do. But the base mechanism and all the AD bits will be open. We have a demobilizer. Who's got mobile accounts that they don't want anymore? Right? We've got some people in the room here who have written some great scripts to do that. We will do this process on the way into the machine. So not as much of a live brain transplant. Because between when the user signs in and when they hit the finder, we can demobilize the account. And so that way you don't have to do it when they're actually signed in. We have a full file vault enabler. Who's using crypts? Crypt is a much better solution, but we have a small part of it. So if you don't need the full escrow and everything else that crypt does, we can actually make sure that before the user hits the finder for the first time, file vault's already enabled. You can, yeah. You can do this on APFS, so it seems kind of silly to have them sign out and everything else again. And it does work with escrow back to MDM and everything else. We've got a progress screen that we can put in there, so you can have kind of a placebo bar for users so that stuff can happen while they're waiting for the finder to come up. We're also working on password creation in the keychain, so that when the user signs in for the first time, we will be able to take their username and password, validate it against AD. If that's correct, we'll then create a local account for them. We will then put that password into the keychain for things like your Exchange password, website password, other things like that. So from a DEP onboarding standpoint, by the time the user hits the finder, everything should be kind of done for them. And they shouldn't get prompted for a password again after that. At least that's our goal. This is also up online. You can see it with the great logo that we have there, the green lock. So that's NOMAD Login ID. That's it. We got a different project name, so it wasn't Mac Troll for everything or Max Home for Josh, but Orchard and Grove -OSS. Office of Strategic Services. That's where a lot of our open source code goes into, so that's why that's up there. And you'll be able to get that out of here. And since I think, how am I doing on time? Oh, plenty of time, right? 10 minutes? We're good? All right, so we got a quick demo. This is what I had the VM coming up. So let's go over here to VMware. Looks like this took. This is the one we wanted. It's this, there we go. All right. So I've got a High Sierra system here. I'll make this full screen so you can see it more. And what we use here is everything that NOMAD Login does is done through this security authorization DB. And if I roll this out for you right here, this actually determines what mechanisms are going to be used when authenticating to AD or to the system. And we're going to change this because we're validating against Okta, but we're going to change this to check AD, and then we've actually got a create user mechanism that runs as root. And so if you're not an existing local user on the machine, we have a check AD mechanism that will check you against Active Directory, hence the name. and then hand it over to this create user mechanism, which will then create the user locally for you. If that all works, we then have down here in our enable FDE mechanism at the end. So we're just going to change out, and I already have this here, in our package that we have on the wiki on that project page, there's an actual double-click installer that you can get for all this. But here we've got check AD set up, so that's what we're going to do first. It'd be possible that you could check AD and check Okta for the same user. That would seem rather redundant, but why not? We also have options of creating admin or non-admin users when we create these accounts. So I'm just going to get out of escape. There we go, quit. And so I'm going to load this in, and it's kind of a funky little command, system or security authorization DB, and you got to back up, you got to do it right, and you got to go over here, and you got to make sure you get your angle the right way, and then console. And so now I've loaded that in. I'm going to make sure that my VPN is up and running. Let's see if it works from inside the VM. Otherwise, this will be a shorter demo. Still be a demo, but it'll be a shorter demo. This is a good sign that maybe it's taking a little while to connect. And just to show you, uh-oh, I didn't like that. That I can go up here, users and groups, and I've got this Joel Rennich account, and I've got a guest user, is all I have on this machine right now. Let me see if my Wi-Fi is not working again. There we go. Break out of full screen. Break out of full screen. Break out of full screen. There we go, single window. Did we lose VPN? Still got a connection. I'm connected here. So we may inherit, so that might be good. All right, so cool, we'll go back to full screen. And all I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna log out. Take some more cold brew. And this is our login window. You'll be able to change this icon to whatever you want. So you can brand it, you can have welcome to your Mac information here, you can do pretty much anything you need. You don't have to use our UI. If you want to use the existing Apple one, but use some of the other mechanisms, such as enabling File Vault or creating passwords in the keychain or demobilizing users, those can all run without any sort of UI from us, because those are all silent mechanisms that run under the hood. However, to actually take a user that doesn't exist on the system and create an account, you have to use our UI for that. The Apple UI gets a little upset when you try to authenticate as somebody that doesn't exist. Just so you know. So I can type in here actually a user, and we'll do aang at nomad.test. And maybe this will work, maybe it won't with the network. And then we're going to hit return, and it's going to sit there. Yeah, it didn't work. So our VPN isn't working correctly right now, but if that user was authenticated against AD, it would then have a local account created for them. So just-in-time provisioning. And we're working on a concept of tattooing a machine, that when you get a machine out of the box in DEP, you want to be able to set it up for a user, but you don't know what user that is going to get it. So the first user to get to the machine can authenticate against AD, and a local account will be created for them. After that, it would only be admin users that would be able to do this. All right? And a lot of this comes out of a conversation I had about 1.5 years ago at another conference, where a user was like, well, if I don't bind, how can I actually have admins go onto my machine and create an admin account so they can do admin work on the system? Well, you can with this. So you can now hand out these machines to users. They can log in for the first time with their Active Directory credentials. A local account is created. They're great. When they have a problem and they hand it off to the help desk and then go away for lunch, you can immediately walk up to that machine at the login, sign in as somebody from one of your domain enterprise accounts or something like that. We will create an admin account for you on the fly. All right? You'll then be able to sign into that machine, and you'll have full admin rights on that system. So some really, really cool things that you can do there, and we're very excited at where that takes us. Questions on that? We have a webcast. And I made it nice and big. Take all the pictures you want. This is the one for our European friends as a sane hour for people here. Josh is going to be getting up. I'll be in Amsterdam, so you won't hear me on this. But Josh will be getting up very early on Eastern time to meet this. And we have one the day before on the 26th, but I think it ends up being about 10 p.m. European time. So you probably want this one. We'll go over the whole stuff, everything that we do with the login window, and everything from there. Questions? We got a couple minutes. And I got to throw this at you. Are you ready? All right, should I?
Yeah, you can love it.
All right. If I take out the camera, it'll be bad.
How does the file vault stuff work with secure token in terms of machine? Is that sorted out?
Sure. We're somewhat cheating in that in a machine right out of depth, since no account has ever been created before, the first user will always get a secure token.
I thought that had to be a mobile account, but is it demobilized?
Oh, they don't have to be mobile account.
Oh, they
It's
don't?
just a secure, the first account. So on your first time in, we effectively run the FDE setup command. We're root, so we run it as root. We know the user's name and password because they've just given it to us in the login window. So then we just put all that together, everything works. Account number 2 is a little bit trickier. We don't have that figured out yet. Well, we do, but not in a way that we feel good about, if that makes sense. In the back. Toss that like 8 rows back.
Well, you all right? Pleasure. I've got a very unusual setup.
Don't we all?
Yeah, don't we all? In terms of doing this for multiple domains, if you don't know which domain a user is coming from, can we do
Sure.
that?
So at the login window, you can either force it into a domain,
I did see the user at domain.
or you can just type in a user at domain in here and we'll figure it out from DNS. So if you have a number of ones that want to use it, just put it in there. Or, as somebody mentioned in the Slack channel for this, if you want it to be a little more just you can actually force it to just one particular domain that you're going to authenticate against. So we should be able to handle both for you.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Rich has one. He got to throw all the way to the front. Big throw, big throw. Big money, big money. Yeah.
I had a question. Whoa, sorry. I had a question about which cloud services you currently support integrating with AD. I know you support Okta. Do you also support like Azure AD?
So Azure will be next. We have some of the basic parts of that all working, and that's really exciting. The cool thing about that is once we get Azure, Ping, Google, we plan on handling all through just a basic SAML authentication. The end goal is if you are using something that does SAML authentication, you'll be able to go to that Azure dashboard and create an app called Sign Into the Mac or something like that. And then actually provision that app to users in Azure, and then we'll respect that at the login window.
Oh, nice.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
That is pretty cool.
That's very cool. So that's where we'd like to get. We're almost there. Okta's just easier. It's got a different API that we can use. We've got to solve, for Azure, we still have to solve the offline authentication case, because I can create you and I can get you signed in, but when you're offline, I don't know your password to authenticate you. So we got to figure that out, but we got some ideas there.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? In the back. Rich, just
I just got a lot of.
YOLO. There you go. That was close.
In the authentication database, you put the FDE enablement after the login window done. Is there a reason you do that?
That way I know, I don't know, no.
Okay, because in Crypt we do it before, and I
It
was
seemed to
just
work
wondering
fine.
why you did it after.
I was doing it there because that's where I was doing a lot of my keychain manipulation, because the OS, the user home directory was already figured out by then
Yeah.
when we're doing the user creation. But no, there's no rhyme or reason.
Okay.
And as both you and I have read all the voluminous documentation
Yeah,
that
it's so
Apple
much.
has produced on this, yeah, it seems to work fine. You're probably, since Crypt can handle the non-APFS case, you're better off going earlier.
Yeah.
I'll only do APFS.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, it seems to work. I mean, for testing a few times in a VM.
Yeah, I figured if you stick the firewall enablement afterwards, and that bit breaks, it would still log in without hosing
Yes.
the login. So I didn't know if that's why you did it, but
That sounds great.
sure.
I'll take that. Any other questions?
This is gonna be lovely.
You gotta throw. Now I've got stickers up here.
That wasn't for the stickers.
But that wasn't for the stickers. But when we're done, I have stickers so you can promote a product you've never used before. Why would you not want to do that? All right, question.
Can you use NOMAD Login to only allow access to certain AD groups?
We aren't there yet, but that will be very easy and in the next version. So the question is, would you only allow like users of the Mac Lab group or something else like that? And very much. There are some cool things, in particular for education and lab environments, that we're interested in doing. So you could have like a guest account, but with actual authentication, so that you can always have to force a login, but then have the same, generic home folder every time. So that's very feasible with this. We're also looking at, I know some sites will have techs set up a machine first, and you can actually layer these logins. So you could require an AD authentication to a particular group, and then have another window that would say, what's the username and password you want to create on this machine. So there's a couple of cool things like that you can do to sign in as one account, but end up as another when you're in the Finder. So lots of cool things like that we're looking at. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Stickers are up front. Enjoy the rest of the conference.